Hey, what's up, everybody? It's hunting season. Welcome to the White Knuckle Podcast, powered by Ozonics. Undetectable, undeniable. Hey everybody, welcome back to the White Knuckle Podcast. Tonight I am joined again by the infamous Todd Pringnitz. He's been absent the last couple of shows, but I've taken him off the bench. No, I'm just kidding. He's just finally has gotten some time back in his schedule, and he's with us tonight. How are you, Todd?
Dude, I am, I'm getting that feeling, brother. I am getting that feeling, and I'll tell you, I've been out, my back is hurt, kinda, and my ankle hurts like crazy because I've been out still hanging tree stands. But, you know, I've been dealing with business stuff. I mean, it's never ending, like the glamorous side of the world of being in the hunting industry is what you see on the, web show and what we talk about here. But there's a whole other side. And so today I went out, I've been looking at this spot on my farm, been going through this area for a million times, and finally picked out the tree. I'm thinking, like, it might work. I walked right in there. It was like 10 yards off a main path. And I'm like, I'm walking down a trail. We got 5 inches of rain today. Hallelujah. Or yesterday. So it was very quiet. And I'm just walking in there, not even paying attention. I drove my wheeler right to within 20 yards of the spot. I'm walking in on this trail, and I look, and I'm like, what is a refrigerator box doing laying in the woods? And it was a freaking giant deer. I'm pretty sure it was a doe, but it looked like a tank. And I am looking at this, and I look down, and 10 feet from me, maybe 15 feet, is a doe laying and looking at me, bedded. And that's the first time it's ever happened in my whole life where I've walked up and they've just watched me walk up on them. And she was just laying there like, what is that? And I had enough honeysuckle around me. So that was today. It got my blood pumping. I went and got a tree stand, hung another one today, and now I got one hanging right over top of that bed. So, Jason, I'm talking about all the preseason stuff. You're actually in it, man. Tell us about how public land hunting's been treating you the last week.
Well, it's been hot. So season opened here in Wisconsin on Saturday morning. And I started Saturday morning hunting relatively close to home. This year with just strictly going to public ground, I knew, based on those podcasts that we did back in, I don't even remember when it was, July maybe? No, it was actually maybe May or June, but whatever the case, I'm glad we did them because I didn't have some preconceived notions that I'm afraid I would have. So it was hotter than hot. It was horribly hot.
You can basically, in a nutshell, Jason, you can kind of throw everything out the window, right?
Right. Well, true.
Kind of, to a certain degree. I mean,
well, there was enough big bucks killed that it kept my interest. So went out Saturday morning it was quite a first date. As many lone wolves as I've set up very few in the dark. I've set up none in the dark in a strange area that I've never hung a tree or hung a set in before. So, just getting used to all that was a bit of a process. So, that's one question I wanted to ask you is if you have any tips on how you pack things in, and we'll get to that after I explain how things started.
I'll put it on. I got a little list going too of different stuff I've kind of conjured as well. So that's one we'll put on the list.
Awesome. So I got in. And if anybody's read my blog, I'm sorry because you'll rehear the story, but I got in, I knew where I wanted to go. I had mapped it out on my GPS prior to, because I had scouted it earlier. I knew I wanted to be a ways off this bean field. I knew the bean field was likely green yet, so I thought I had a chance chance. I had a Spartan camera in there for a lot of the summer, and periodically, not daily, but periodically, I would get deer, and I would call it a 2.5, 3.5-year-old buck, which I would have been happy with in that part of the world, just because that's going to be one of the best deer that are around there. So I felt like I was in the right spot. I set up. I got up in the tree. It was still dark, so I was happy with that. I didn't fall or anything like that, and got everything set up. Everything was ready, good to go. Sat there for, I don't know, an hour, hour and a half, and heard that unmistakable snap of a twig, and that reminded me why it is that I'm out there, because my heart went to the moon. And I'm looking, I'm thinking, oh, there's got to be something coming, and I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking, and all of a sudden I see a tree, a small sapling shaking back and forth, and I'm like, oh my God, here he comes. This is going to be him.
It's a tree shaker.
Right. It's gonna be him. And then I'm like, wait, what? And I put my Vortex binos up, and I look, and I'm like, that's purple. What in the world is purple? And I'm like, hold on a second. That's a chick. It's a chick with a purple purse. What? Oh, wait, there's another guy. There's a guy and a gal, and the gal has a purple purse, and he has the standard Ruger 1022 22 with a, ginormous, whatever to whatever scope on it, and he's squirrel hunting. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. Should I say something? I don't want to get shot. I could get shot, but I don't want to get shot.
You could give them a warning shot over their heads. That's what we used to do back in Nam.
Right. Okay, I'll remember that. I could have packed in my 40 with me. But anyway, so I didn't say anything, and they were about 60 yards out. I did range find them just for fun, and did put my video camera on and tape the whole thing. And lo and behold, they take the deer stand that I didn't know was there in the dark that was going to lead them right under my tree, because they start angling, and they're angling more and more and more and more and more. And I'm like, oh gosh, they're going to come right underneath my tree. I probably should have said something. Well, at this point, it's great video, and it's too good of a story to say anything. So I let them walk underneath my tree, and the video cameras pointed straight down to the poor people. So
you at least beat them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely beat the Ozonics. Worked like a charm. They never winded me or anything. Yeah, I really knocked that one out of the park. The thing that gave it away, though, you can do nothing about the lone wolf straps that they saw on the tree when they were standing next to it. And then he looked straight up into the lens of my camera, whispered something to his wife, and they both seemed like they wanted to turn inside out. And that's when I said good morning, and I'm like, you guys don't need to run off, blah, blah, blah. And we talked, and they said that they were squirrel hunting, and the rest is on the blog. So,
it comes with the territory, man. That's what, even hunting private land, like a lot of the farms that I used to hunt here in Iowa, I'm not a rich man. I can't lease all these farms, and most of these guys won't even lease if you want to. So you were hunting farms other guys hunted, and, you deal with hunting with other people. That comes with the territory. So it sounds like you had some tough times in the beginnings. We've had a couple conversations about it, and kind of we had a couple discussions about just process of lone wolf setting your stands, and you asked me several questions about that. And then you were feeling it, like your heart was pretty low. I could tell you were getting a little bit bummed out and a little bit frustrated, because even after a few days of hunting hard, waking up in the morning and all that, you get pretty burnt out. And then all of a sudden I got the text I wanted, which was, dude, I just saw a bunch of deer, including a nice buck. So tell us about your successful end to the triumph after all the heat and everything else.
Well, let me back up and say that. So Saturday I hunted morning and night, never saw anything. Sunday I took the morning off, went to church with the family, did all that. Sunday night, I stayed around the Dells here again, and you're right. I was feeling pretty low. I got into this area that I had scouted earlier in the year, and thought that I was, going to find more sign than what I did. I was absolutely looking for oak trees, and I found them, white oak trees, and lots of acorns. But I just didn't find any deer sign, and I'm just going to sit out here and see nothing again, and this is frustrating. And and I found a deer trail just 10 seconds after that, and I'm like, well, it's a trail. Why not? So I just started to strap one lone wolf stick on the tree, and I looked out of my left eye, and something caught my eye, and it was orange, and I'm like, what is that? And I look, and I'm like, well, you idiot, that's a rub. And it was a rub on a tree the size of my thigh. So I'm like, ooh, well, so I quick went over and looked at it, and then I noticed a few more rubs, and then I noticed a scrape, and a relatively good sized scrape. So I readjusted my stand, put it up, sat there all night, didn't see a deer. I had to pick up my daughter early, so I got down early. In the process, spooked a doe. Not a big deal, got out of there, and then, so went over to a different part of the state on Monday morning, met some guys from Michigan that were in the outdoor business, or not anymore, and hunted Monday morning, didn't see a deer, but I felt like I was in a good spot. I then went and I got permission to put a trail camera there, checked my trail camera, and the buck that I had gotten pictures or taken pictures of over the summer had been there earlier that morning while I was there, but it was just too dark. And then two other bucks had come through, and several of the does and fawns, so I knew I was at least close, and got out of there, went that night, Monday night, and I'll save the drama that ensued prior to me getting to the stand. I'll just say that I ran into a gentleman that owned the property next to it, and he thought it was necessary to tell me that I was accessing it wrong. And the reason that I was accessing it primarily is because of Dan Infalt. And, Dan, I'm going to blame it on Dan.
Gotta blame somebody, right, bro?
Right. I said, call Dan Infalt. Here's his number. You're going to need to take this up with him, because this is what he told me to do. So I'll just set it up for you. I walked in the south boundary because we had a southeast wind. The point that I was going to hunt, the ridge that I was going to hunt, pointed to the south and east. So I came in on the south end, and then I walked north. And as I'm coming along that north end, I, get a hey. And then it's this guy, and I, a long story short, I just said, listen, we're not going to hold court out here. Call me later.
Hey, dude, that's what you carry blunts for.
Right. So I moved on, much to his disapproval, and I felt bad because I just screwed up his hunting. And one of the things that I did say walking away was, hey, if we were smart, and that's one of the things Tyler Tissue told me about, prior to even doing this, he's like, just mention it to people. So I said, hey, what would avoid all this is if you just let me walk in with you, and then neither of us would spook deer, and we'd both have good hunting. And he's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't think so. But I got set up, and much to my surprise, 20 minutes later, I looked out in the field, and I saw my first deer off the stand, and I was elated. It was a late fawn because it still had spots, but I didn't care. It was a deer, and I finally saw one, and it was on the neighbor's property, and it was a ways away. And as I'm glassing that one, I look, and I'm like, that's a big deer. And it was a good buck. My initial thought, like it always is, if you've watched any of our web shows or videos in the past, I always end up shooting something that I go, wow, it's not really what I thought I was, and I try and make some excuse. And this year I vowed not to do that. The deer fed, and he kept feeding closer. And then I lost him, and so I stood up, and I'm watching. All of a sudden, here came legs, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. Grab my bow, got the camera in position, hit record, and I'm sure you'll see it on an upcoming web show. I hit record, and I began to concentrate on the deer, where I was going to shoot it, because I had a very, very limited amount of shooting lanes. And I took a glance at the horns, and I went, well, and I stopped myself immediately. And I hung up the bow, and he walked through, and I proceeded to, pass him up. I'll call it a pass. I don't know that I really ever would have had a shot, but I'm going to go with a pass. And then
good enough.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's my story.
Good
I get
enough.
to tell it however I want to. And then I think 9 or 10 does and fawns came up and passed me. And that's the thing I want to talk about just real quickly. Man, if you hunt hill country or you hunt swamps and you haven't gotten a chance to get on the Hunting Beast forum or listen to our podcast with Dan Infalt or buy his videos, do it, because there is not a thing in any of those videos that does not hold true. Those deer did everything that he said that they would do based on the wind. They came from the opposite side of the hill that the wind was blowing to. So he's going to tell you in his videos that they're going to always be on the leeward side, and the leeward side would be the side opposite that the wind's blowing on, right?
Sure.
And so that's why I set up where I did, thinking they've only got a small access to this alfalfa field. So they're going to come, from the northeast side or the north side of this ridge, because the wind was out of the east-southeast, and that's the only place they could bed. To stay, to use that upper third and the wind tunnel and all that stuff that Dan talks about. And that's exactly what they did. So I was ecstatic. I was so excited that my plan came together. And I honestly, it's one of the few plans that I've ever had that I felt like I was calculated in what I did. I think in the land that I hunted before, a deer walked by me because he just happened to walk by me. I really didn't have a plan or a reason for sitting where I was, other than I knew over the years that it was a good spot.
Well, dude, and the cool part about the way you're hunting is, whether you kill a deer in that area or not, when you can go in and literally scout on the run, set your stand, and have deer even within shooting distance, you got to kind of consider yourself successful compared to, think back to the early human days, like where you have to kill to survive and all that. So you've already done way, like in one day, like imagine how, how far we've come.
Right.
And dude, you can literally position yourself in it, and each one of those encounters makes all the hard hunting before it worth it, does it not?
It does. I feel like I accomplished the goal, and I did it based on my knowledge. And again, it's knowledge that other people gave me, but who cares? I'll take whatever I can get. Someone told me a long time ago, use whatever resources are available to you, and that's what I did. And I text Dan and let him know what happened, and that was cool. I'm sure he appreciates hearing once in a while that one of his pupils, so to speak, had some success. But yeah, it worked. Certainly that has put me in the class of guys like Mark and Terry Drury, I think, for sure, right?
Oh, well, here's the deal, dude. If you can pull it off on public land, like doing what you're doing, even with small bucks or whatever, if you get onto properties that don't have the pressure, and I've hunted some of them, and dude, it's a different world. The deer aren't pressured, so the bucks move around during daylight way more, and nothing against anybody else, because we all are going for that, and that's, at least, dude, who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want to sit in a stand and watch a bunch of big bucks, right? So, but within reason, that's not a realistic thing for most people, including myself. I'm able to hunt mature big deer, but they are still hunted enough where, dude, I just don't see the daytime activity. Not in the broad daylight, like occasionally, but not like what some people have, just because of the sheer vastness of some of their properties, where they can leave huge sections alone, and these deer can grow up and never really have any pressure, and that just changes their habits. But one thing I've always said too, dude, is living in Iowa now, if I wouldn't have grown up in Michigan, I wouldn't appreciate it. I still get my heart still just goes ripping as soon as I see 120, 130 inch deer coming through the woods, because that was all you could ever dream of, in Michigan. So, it's all in relation, and that's what's kind of cool. I'm excited to see what you continue to see in public land hunting, and with all the resources that we have now, dude. I mean, we've got guys like Dan Infalt and Grant Woods, and we've had Cuz Strickland, a bunch of really big brains in the whitetail world. And so take all that together, mash it up, take what you can out of it, and see what you can make of it. So it sounds like you've kind of already started testing some theories, and you're already starting to see some success. What's your next move?
Well, a couple things that you just touched on that I failed to mention is that I had the good fortune of doing a podcast with Grant Woods on I believe it was the Wednesday before the opener. And one of the things that he mentioned that never occurred to me is he said, in this heat, they're going to bet on the north-facing slope. And so that was also one of the things. It just happened that, that the north-facing slope in this situation catered to the wind. So there definitely is something to that as well, because all of these deer came on the north-facing slope. I think so. Given the opportunity in the right hill country, I would say that if they can favor a north-facing slope where they're not going to be in the sun so much when it's 80 degrees, they're going to do that if they can put the wind in their favor. So in other words, if they have two options, just know that I think that they're going to pick that other one. And also, here's the probably the most profound thing that I feel like I grasped for one of the first times in the, good Lord, 28 years that I've been bow hunting, 29, 30, I don't know how many years. I'm old. Anyway, is that don't ever underestimate these animals. They are, like Grant said, they're not out there to reproduce. That's not all that they think about. As a matter of fact, that's not, half of what they think about. They want to survive. And don't ever think for 1 second that they're not thinking about survival, with the exception of when all what breaks loose in November. They're thinking survival. That's all that they're thinking. Yes, they've got to eat. That's part of their equation, but they're thinking about surviving. And in hill country like that, or swamp, whatever the case may be, it's all about the wind, because the wind is their friend, really. And I've never been able to test it like I did this week, and it's 100% accurate. So you got to pay attention to the wind, not only what direction it's coming from, but more importantly, what it's doing on top of that ridge, when you get up there. And that's why milkweed is so important, or whatever your choice of, windicator is. It's important, especially when you're going to use a tool like Ozonics. You'll see in the video that deer absolutely came downwind of me. He absolutely came downwind of me. And he never, he did bat an eye, because he stopped for a second. He looked around, he smelled it like they always do, and then he came right through it. So, you just have to pay attention to that. And it's something that I said to somebody, I don't remember if it was you, but I've often went, well, are they really that smart? I can get away with this. No, you can't. You can't. And I think Mark Drury said it best: if you're not killing big bucks and you're wondering why, look in the mirror. And for me, it's doing, or rather not doing, things like that. So
when it comes to like the wind, like you were just talking about, the thing you got to consider is they live and die by that, and they survive by it. But once you start to figure that out, man, you can use that against them, because you start to realize, well, where would I want to set up? And I'm going to mention him probably a couple more times in this show, but we're going to be doing a podcast next week with a good friend of ours named Eddie from Military Special Forces. And this guy, once you get to know him and you hear his story, I mean, it's very similar. Like when they're hunting people, you're doing the same things that you need to hunt whitetails, and you just got to put yourself in the perspective of being the target, and then you set up on, You set up on the way you'd want to be as the target, as opposed to what's the easiest or the best way for the hunter. And once you get that, and you start to reverse the way you think about it, it starts to make you kind of feel like you've been wasting a lot of time and a lot of really nice saddles and pinch points and field edges, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a reason that I made a commitment to myself when I decided to go through this, what could be a painful process of public land hunting, and that's to do what, I have the luxury of learning on these podcasts, do what the people tell me. I could have gone up right through the middle of that on a 2-track and not had to cross some washouts that were 12 foot deep and fall on my rear end and things of that nature. But I did it the right way, and the end result of doing it the right way and the hard way is generally, there's gold at the end of effort, I always say, and that particular night it worked out. It's not going to work out like that every time, but I believe it worked out like that because I played by the rules, so to speak.
Hey, it keeps you going for another week, and that's gonna
right,
dude. In the world of whitetail hunting, trust me, man, you're gonna start to get into tough territories into October. Especially acorn time, where they just don't move as much. If you have really nice food plots and all that crap, it makes it a lot easier. But you're earning your stripes, brother, and you're gonna learn. So you're gonna learn a lot doing it. That's part of the process.
I don't know about the rest of y'all, but in this part of the world, there is more acorns than there are leaves on the ground, I think. I mean, they are everywhere. If you've got, in all of this diverse timber that I've been hunting, there's acorns everywhere, just absolutely everywhere. So it's got things literally screwed up for a little bit here. So we'll see what happens.
Hey, I mean, if I were hunting big timber, public land right now, I'd be out doing a lot of scouting, finding some thrashed areas and try to set up in some acorn ridges that are inaccessible unless you really work to get to them. Beyond that, I wanted to talk about the drought in the Midwest, and at least in the lower Midwest here in Iowa. We have been going through an incredible tough time for the farmers and hunters alike. It's been really, really dry. Up until last night, we had probably about 2 inches of rain over about 2.5 months. It was pretty bad. Last night, we got 5 inches of rain. So I am I'm so happy. Dude, I have so many food plots that are just screaming right now. And some of them are going to be, they look delicious already, and so they're going to be over the top now. So I'm so excited. I got some really good looking real world plots. But talking about drought, for anybody who's dealing with this heat or the summertime, trail camera pictures have probably been crap. When all of the terrain and all of the small creek systems dry out, you've got only your main food sources, which generally, at least in my neck of the woods here around farm country, you got farm ponds, and then you got major creeks and rivers. And we have a major creek that runs around us. But when all of the secondary and third-area and tertiary or fortiary or whatever the heck you want to call them, when all of those little secondary spots go dry, all those little creeks that usually have water in them when you've got rain, when they all go dry, the deer will start to disperse from typical areas that you're used to getting trail camera pictures. So if you're, not experiencing what you'd experience on a good season, last night we got 5 inches here. So it's going to thank God. I'm so excited, man. We finally have soil that's going to be completely and totally packed with water. I'm so excited about it. But
you sound excited.
Oh, dude, I mean, it will just open everything up. And I guarantee in the next week, if I check my trail cameras, whenever it rains like this, all of a sudden the deer just go back to their natural habits because they can bed where they prefer to bed. They can live where they prefer to live because all they have to do is walk 50 to 100 yards and they're going to have a drink of water. And they prefer actually drinking in some of these little steeps and little small little pools. So with that being said, we got rain, and I'm so happy. Like, dude, we're finally out of the red, so to speak.
Well, that's good news because you, if I remember correctly, the times that I've spent on your farm. Actually, let's talk about what Todd's strategy is, and you don't have to put all your cards on the table, but just give us an overall view. I think everybody knows what my strategy is, and that's just to hope and pray that I run into one by accident. No, it'll be a little more calculated than that. But what's your overall strategy with your season opens on next? Let's see, a week. I don't even remember.
Dude, it's like a week and a half or something like that. And I always like this is where maybe I'm just getting old or whatever. I've been hunting. This is my 28th year as well, so we're right up around the same time period, Jason. But opening day is still special to me, but I don't just rush into the woods and start freaking, bleeding the death out of every animal that comes within, distance. The season is long. I try to make it count. For me, I've been dinking around getting food plots going up until literally last Saturday night at like 10 o'clock at night or something. After we went and watched the Iowa game, I freaking was out reseeding because rain was coming in. So after a long season of food plotting, to be honest with you, I'm happy just hanging out, shooting my bow, getting my body in shape for hunting, and my mind ready to start killing big animals in the pressures. So I'll shoot through early October, and I'll only hunt based on weather if we get some nice cold fronts or something. But I've put a lot of effort into food, and I'll tell you, I've said it a million times, if you are in a position where you can create some food plots, create some food, it just gives you control over the herd. And if you have control over the herd, it makes it a lot easier to predict big buck activity. And I might have like 12 to 14 green plot, like kill plots this fall, and I'll have tons and tons of grain and corn and beans and stuff on top of that. But you get into like the Duries and the Cossies, man, they have hundreds. They're on a whole different scale. But to me, that's okay. I don't need to kill 15 big bucks a year, even 3 or 4 big bucks. If I kill one nice one, I'm tickled. So that my scale, and that's what everybody's got to be kind of scalable to what your capacity is. But you got to raise the bar and be patient, man. That's once you get patient point, you start passing deer. That's when you actually start to learn something, because you get to watch the behavior of these animals as they walk past, and a lot of times you get busted and you watch how they react, and you get to the point. Actually, one of the things I was thinking about today, I've been practicing my bow and trying to come up with different ideas for podcasts and stuff. And one of the things about shooting and like buck fever and all that is, dude, it goes back to muscle memory, and in my opinion, I think a lot of it's just mental preparation of where, you've heard it a million times. And again, I'll mention Eddie, our buddy from the military. He's going to mention a million times muscle memory and things like that. But it's also mental preparation where, you anticipate something happening, you envision it happening over and over and over, and you imagine what it would feel like, to come to full draw and shoot at something like that. So here's my shooting tip for the week. The next time you go out in your backyard, whether you're shooting at 10 yards or at 100 yards, practice shooting at nothing. Shoot at a blank space, pick out a spot and shoot it, and keep shooting at blank spaces like that. And that's part of my prep for getting ready to kill. You can go in the backyard and sling arrows, man. And, I can shoot 5 arrows at 20 yards and break a bunch of fletchings and get Robin Hoods and stuff. And that's awesome, right? I mean, that's cool. I was there years ago where I enjoyed doing that. I was tickled doing it. Then I got breaking arrows. But now I really, really focus on trying to change up my strategy so that I can anticipate the unanticipatable. And part of that is just by mixing up your shooting strategy. I haven't busted out any of my silhouette targets this year, Jason. I'm only shooting at, I got a Reinhardt block, and I'm moving it to different distances, and I'm shooting at spots and points on the block. and I'm not even shooting silhouettes. I don't know if I'm not going to shoot silhouettes all year, but right now, I'm kind of into fine tuning my shooting, and it's keeping me entertained. And after 28 years of shooting a bow, half of the battle is keeping yourself entertained, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no substitute for practice. We all know that, whether you've played sports before or whatever the case, you got to practice, and that's one of the things that Grant and I touched on when we talked. He shoots every day. I've tried to shoot every day. First, I have to confess that there's never been a time in my life that I've had a Robin Hood. I may have had 2 arrows touching at one point, but I'm not a great shot. I've never. No, are you kidding? I suck. I suck. I'm lucky.
Dude,
I've even
had
hit
8 or 9 of them. I think.
I'm lucky. I haven't missed more deer. I don't know how I'm able to put it together. Some days, but I've been able to. I haven't lost. Well, other than a couple of years ago, I haven't lost a buck or a doe in a long, long time. So, but no, I'm horrible,
dude. Hey, are we in the white knuckle competition for Are we going against Levi Morgan and the ASA and all this crap? Hell no. We're trying to kill animals. If you're able to kill animals, it doesn't matter what you do in the backyard. And that's kind of the way I am. I kind of do my own thing, and I'm happy with that because I'm confident in being able to go out and whack and stack them. But
that ain't no bullshit. You do your own thing. There's no question in my mind.
Well, I mean, but, I tell you meet the best athletes, the best guys out in particular areas, and they find their thing, and they're just really, really good at it, and they pound the hell out of it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But part of that for all of us is, sucking up what you can here and there. But what works for one works for others. I've had guys in the hunting industry, I've told them how I shoot my bow, and they're like, you can't accurately shoot like that. Like, no, you got to learn how to do this, that, or the other. And I'm like, well, it works for me, man. And to be honest with you, so long as I can settle my pin on the side of a refrigerator, laying down on the side a refrigerator box at 20 yards.
Right.
And let it eat and kill a giant every year. That's the only consideration I have. And other than that, everything else is based on that moment. So I don't know. I only shoot on my hunting rig is all I shoot year round. I don't have a 3D rig. I shoot every arrow year round, and I don't shoot year round. I just started shooting last week, to be honest with you. But literally every arrow from the time I pick my bow up, man, I focus on that one arrow at a time. Try to pick one target at a time. Don't shoot groups. You want to anticipate that one shot moment and just get your body and your mind trained for one pin, one shot. You're not going to be aiming at a knock on the side of a whitetail, right? So you've got to get your brain wrapped around that. And I think a lot of us, we pick up a lot of bad habits when we start shooting. And again, I'm going to mention Eddie, but Eddie's going to, part of what I want to go through is Eddie's strategy for, imagine the type of targets some of these guys are shooting at. It's a whole different level. So the amount of concentration, the amount of accuracy, and just some of the things just to cool your jets. And, hey, it's just another shot. And once you talk to Eddie, that guy shot millions of bullets and probably hundreds of thousands of arrows. And I've probably shot, I don't even know, man, hundreds of thousands of arrows over the years. It was something that I did so much back in the day. I don't even want to know. But, it's one arrow, Jason, just one.
Right on. No, I agree. Eddie is going to, first of all, none of you have ever heard, well, maybe you have. Not to my knowledge. You're not going to want to miss the show a week from the Monday that this is released, because Eddie is, he's a very interesting person to talk to. He's the kind of guy you could sit down and talk.
He's freaking Rambo, man.
He is. He's
straight up Rambo.
A real life Rambo.
He's Rambo First Blood.
Exactly.
Straight up.
There's a guy that
he's going to bring you in the woods, jump out of a tree onto your helicopter, and kill everybody.
Anyway,
and he'll probably do it and shoot you with an arrow at 100 yards while he's in air.
I remember we had a couple years ago at our film school, you guys had it set up, and Eddie did his talk with us about team building and things of that nature. And really, it wasn't about shooting; it was about team building. Because obviously, if he's going to go into the far reaches of this earth, Afghanistan, wherever it is that he is, and he's going to take a team of guys. We can all figure out what their job is. It's important that you establish a good team. But then after he did this whole thing, he springs on us that, I don't know if you remember it or not, that we're going to do a 100-yard shoot. And I'm like, oh, whatever. And so he let all of us go and make a fool out of ourselves first. And he pulls up and 10 rings it at 100 yards. And I'm like, okay,
He was 4 inches off, but he said part of it was because there was a little bit of a wind that he didn't anticipate or something.
Yeah, he had some lame excuse.
Anyway, it was pretty freaking good.
It was great. So that'll be...
I'll just put it to you this way. He's not the kind of guy who uses keychain carabiners on his trips.
No. They're he's the real deal. One of the things that you mentioned reminded me of something that I just talked to David tonight on the phone, and we were talking about I don't remember what, but I said, the one thing that I've realized in part of this process is that slow and steady wins the race. A lot of times we all try and shove a golf ball through a garden hose and get out to the timber and climb up in our stand for that last second hunt. And, a lot of times it's just going to end up costing you more than it's going to gain you, because you're going to bump deer. And again, give them more credit than you have in the past if you're not having success, because they know when you're there. You're in their world. If someone comes in my house, I know it. And if they're really good at it, I won't know it. So you've got to be really good at it. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that you had mentioned earlier, just in regard to Lone Wolf, you were like, how do you set up in the AM, man? I've done it. But I'll tell you, like early season specifically, I think you're almost better off waking up at first light, driving around and glassing, and then just wait until the early afternoon. And instead of, getting up at the ass crack of dawn and killing yourself, most of the time early season, unless you really have one pegged down, most of the time you're doing more damage than good. And you're also doing more damage than good to your own body, because you're just forcing yourself to get up and you're just exhausting yourself. So,
well, hold on a second. Now, you just like to get up late, all right? So
I do, but here's the exception. Instead of getting up, like, what's your typical hunting weekend, Jason? Is it a Thursday through a Sunday, a Friday through a Saturday? What do you typically do?
I'm in the car business. I don't get a weekend. But my typical, let's say I did have a weekend. Let's just say this weekend. I got up at 4 o'clock on Saturday morning, and I would have gotten up at 4 o'clock on Sunday morning. And
okay. The first morning, unless you have something pre-scouted, pre-set up, or pre-trimmed where you know exactly where you're going and it's all marked and everything, I would use that first morning and do some mobile scouting. And if you are keyed in on an area where you've got bucks that live, and you've got some fields that you can access, like get out of your car at first light with your binoculars, go sneak out on field edges, climb up on ditch lines, whatever, try to glass those bucks out in those fields and see if you can determine where they're feeding in the morning right before they go to bed. Because if there is agriculture available and there's water available right around, they will literally feed right in those ag fields, right by their beds. And if you can see where they're going in, it gives you a spot to set up. That's where I think early season, I think you're better off doing more scouting in the mornings and saving it. But the exception is when you locate where one of those bucks could be bedded. If you go get in there that evening and you set up and you hunt, and depending on what you see that evening, if you think it's going to be a good spot in the morning, you got everything set. Leave everything in the tree, including your bow. I do anyway. It's a little bit more difficult on public land probably, but so you can sneak in the next day, climb right up into your stand. I don't do that if it's really cold and I'm going to get a hard frost on my bow. But other than that, I leave everything in the tree that I can, other than cloth, anything clothing related. But I'll leave my Ozonics right up in the tree. I'll pull the batteries out the bottom and just go charge my batteries, bring them back in the morning. Then you don't have to reset anything. But if you can leave your bow right up in the tree too, it just helps you sneak in those back in those areas, and that gives you your best chance. Going in and setting up in the morning, I think you're probably doing more harm than good, if I had to guess.
I would 100% agree with you. If I was not doing this whole public land experiment like I am and hunting on the private property that I still have, I would never have gone, well, not never, maybe in my younger years I would have, but I would not normally hunt a morning in the first part of the season. As a matter of fact, my rule would be not to hunt a morning unless you've got an extremely good cold front in, let's say, the middle of October. I wouldn't normally try and even begin to hunt mornings till after the 20th, 25th of October, just because you're right.
Unless you're on one. Unless you're on a big buck, because then you throw everything out the window. We were just talking about that this week, about how I was on Rusty Nail a few years ago, first week in October. But it's kind of like the rut, man. When you got a hot doe, it throws everything out the window. Same thing. If you know exactly where a buck is at, like, in my opinion, that's a rarity. So you go after them, and you go after them. If at least you're a bow hunter, you go after them aggressively right from the get-go. It's a lot different if you're somebody who owns a lot of land and you bow hunt, you gun hunt, you have family that gun hunts and whatever. So somebody's going to get a crack at that buck, right? Well, if you're only a bow hunter, you only have so many opportunities. And if you know where they're at, that's half the battle. And that's the way you got to look at it. If you know where they're at, that's half the battle. So how do you hunt them and kill them without blowing it? Well, if you can do it more than one set about 10 times, you're better than me.
Slow and steady.
Yeah, just trial and error, man. But I don't know. In my opinion, it's kind of like bungee jumping. It sure is difficult until you jump.
Well, yeah, then there's no stopping.
Yeah,
I love bungee jumping. Do they even do that anymore, bungee jump? I haven't seen that. They used to do it in the Dells here all the time. When I drove the ducks in the Dells, we were right next door to the bungee jump. And so they would let us do the jump for free because we'd plug them on our tours and so forth. So we'd go over there just, I don't know, a few nights a week and bungee jump. I loved it. But I haven't seen that stuff.
I got 2 words for you, Jason.
What?
Liability and concrete.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a duck driver joke. Well,
no. And believe me, those pillows are awesome when they're inflated.
Yeah. Oh, it was fun, though.
Oh, I've done it too, man. It's an absolute rush. But hey, any last words for our viewers this particular segment?
Well, I just wanted to touch on one thing, and we'll get into this. If you follow us, you'll want to continue to pay attention. But let's since this is going to be airing next week, Monday morning, let's talk about if you're hunting next week. What things look like. I'm going to say that this is going to air on. Well, it's definitely going to air on Monday. If you're in the upper Midwest, you're going to hit a cold front next week. So I would say that even for those folks that are starting October 1st, you're going to be right in the midst of a cold front. What kind of tactics would you employ knowing that we're going from 90 degrees this Saturday, 89 on Sunday, 87 on Monday, to 79 on Tuesday, to 67, all the way down on Friday, Saturday of next week, you're looking at 64 degrees. And Sunday, you're looking at 65 degrees. What if you were on one?
I can tell you what the secret is going to be down here, brother.
What? Tell me.
Any place that's had any drought, with all the rain that's just come through, there's going to be they're going to be wanting to devour fresh green growth because the browse has been absolutely at a minimal for the last 2 months, literally. Like their fresh green browse, all that nutrient-packed stuff has been just completely dried out to nothing. So they've been eating corn, literally stalks and everything. They've been eating beans. They're going to be, all of that green, delicious browse is going to be drying up. So either hunt acorns or green plots. If you have fresh green plots, or if you are hunting natural CRP that just gets natural rain as alfalfa, clover, your typical CRP type crops, they are going to be grazing and looking for greens over the next couple weeks to replenish what they didn't have for the last month. And I really believe that I think green plots, like that's why I'm so excited, man. We just got all this rain. I got some beautiful green plots. I think for the next 2-3 weeks, they're just going to be gorging themselves because they haven't had it. Now, granted, they're going to be eating acorns and all that, but they're not going to sit in the woods and eat acorns for freaking 2 weeks straight. All right. They like a lot of variety. What they are not going to have in the timber, at least down here this year, is the green browse to go with the acorns. So you're going to see a lot more movement, I think. Temperature depending, but if you got water, acorns, green plots, oh my God, it should be phenomenal. It could be an absolute green infusion.
Green infusion. So hunt the food. Obviously, that's not going to be a secret to anybody. And
you're not going to rattle them in this time of year.
Right. Definitely want to stay away from rattling. Another tip that I took away from my podcast with Grant Woods, if you get a buddy or something that shoots a doe, go to that doe, go help them get it, and flip open the stomach and plug your nose, like you said, if you have to, and find out what they've been eating, because there's no better MRI than that. That'll give you a pretty good idea of where to
it's always
find that deer, or not that deer, but
dude,
a deer.
I don't know who the heck. I was just talking about that to somebody on the phone the other day. And it is amazing over the years, especially down here in Iowa where, dude, you've got all this corn plots and bean plots and stuff like that. And like a lot of times we've killed these bucks or does and they've actually been feeding in the corn plots, and you shoot them and you go back. And I always cut open the stomach just to see what they've been eating for curiosity's sake. And even when they're literally coming out and feeding in this corn, and they're like, there's corn everywhere or beans everywhere, there is absolutely at no point, I don't think they consume more than 20 to 30% corn or beans or something like that in a daily habit. They are a browse animal. They're like cattle. They want to snip, snip, snip as they walk. That's just the way. And I think a lot of it's digestive too. I think in their bodies, and they got to be moving in order to keep things moving, so to speak. I think that's a part of it. And all that green browse, that's where they get a lot of their liquid diet. A lot of their water diet comes through all that greens, and so I think that's why they don't need nearly as much water as what humans do, or at least we think they do. They don't need nearly as much, but this season's different, with it being dry down here. So anyway, these green plots are going to be hot. Acorns are going to be good. Mostly just watch trail cameras and wait until you think you might be able to get an opportunity at one. And if you don't have an opportunity at one, then go frickin' find somebody who does and watch where they park.
Boom. There you have it. Perfect.
I'm just making that up. Don't do that.
I think everybody's able to figure that out. Well, that's about all we've got for this week. Again, we're going to have Eddie on in the coming weeks, and pay attention to a special announcement hopefully coming up here in the next 2 or 3 weeks of some exciting stuff that we've got coming down the road. Any final thoughts, Todd?
No, just thank you for listening, and hope you enjoy this segment. We're always trying to bring you the freshest, most realistic approach to how to kill big whitetails, and we learn with you, and hopefully you learn something along the way with us.
Well, there you have it. You're all caught up on what's going on with Todd and myself, whether you wanted to be or not. I can't believe that's 39 episodes in the books of the White Knuckle podcast. So we hope you've enjoyed each and every one of them. Again, do us a favor. Give us a review on iTunes. It's the only way that we can get better. If you can rate us with a 5, that would be awesome. As a matter of fact, anything less than that would be a fail for us. So go ahead, give us a ratings on iTunes. If you have a question, go ahead and post that question on one of our social media outlets. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And by all means, if you have a show idea, absolutely go ahead and throw it out there. We'll go ahead and put it on the air if we can. Remember, as a loyal listener of this podcast, you're entitled to a 15% discount from Ozonics. As a loyal listener, all you have to do is spend $3.99 or more on their website, sign up for an account, and then go ahead and order what it is that you want, and then use the coupon code WKP2017. Again, WKP2017, and the folks at Ozonics are going to be kind enough to give you 15% off, which is some real money if you're going to buy one of the new units. So don't forget to do that. I think that's about all I've got for this week. I won't go through the usual instructions on how to download a podcast. If you don't know how to download a podcast, shoot me a message. I'll help you out. Can't think of anything else. Again, if you have any questions or show for an idea, just go ahead and post it on our social media page. With that, have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. Good luck in the tree. Wear your safety harness. Jason out.